Jake Morrison pulled his thick jacket tighter around his body as he walked through the metal hallways of Outpost 7. The cold always found a way to sneak inside, even through the best heating systems he could build. His breath made small clouds in the air, and he could hear the wind howling outside like an angry beast. The ice planet Kethra Prime was not a place humans were meant to live. The temperature outside was minus 80 degrees, cold enough to freeze a person solid in minutes. But humans had come here anyway, because deep under the ice were special crystals that made spaceships fly faster than light. Without these crystals, people could not travel between the stars. Jake had been on this frozen world for 8 months now. He was 34 years old and came from Montana, where winters were cold, but nothing like this. His job was to keep everyone warm and alive. He designed heating systems and fixed them when they broke. The other workers called him the Heat Wizard because he could make warmth appear in the coldest places. Every morning, Jake checked the temperature readings on his computer screen. Today it showed minus 82 degrees outside. He shook his head and took a sip of his hot coffee. A coffee was one of the few good things about this place. It was real coffee, not the fake stuff they usually sent to mining colonies. From his office window, Jake could see the endless white landscape of Kethra Prime. Snow and ice stretched as far as the eyes could see. The sky was always gray, and the sun was just a pale circle that gave no warmth. Most people hated looking outside because it made them feel hopeless. But Jake liked to watch. He watched because of the creatures that lived on this planet. The colonists called them Kethhounds, and they looked like wolves but bigger. They had thick fur that was silver and blue, and their eyes were bright gold. Most of the other humans were afraid of them and thought they were just dangerous animals. But Jake saw something different when he looked at them. The Kethhounds were smart. Jake had watched them hunt together, and they planned their attacks like human soldiers. He had seen them take care of their young and mourn their dead. They had language too, with different howls and sounds that meant different things. Jake had started to learn some of their calls by listening carefully. His friend Amy Carter, who studied alien life, thought he was crazy for watching them so much. She said they were just animals acting on instinct, but Jake knew better. He had grown up around wolves in Montana, and these creatures were different. They were more than animals. The mining work never stopped on Kethra Prime. Giant machines dug deep into the ice, pulling out the precious crystals that powered human civilization. The crystals were beautiful, glowing with a soft blue light. But getting them was dangerous and hard work. Many miners had died in accidents or from the cold. Jake's job was to keep the machines running and the workers alive. He had designed special heating systems for the mining tunnels and created warm shelters where people could rest. His inventions had saved many lives, and the company was happy with his work. They had even offered him a promotion to work on a warmer planet, but Jake had said no. He wanted to stay and learn more about the Keth-hounds. Today was the start of the harsh winter season on Kethra Prime. The temperature would drop to minus 120 degrees, and it would stay that cold for 3 months, most of. The planet's animals would hide underground near the warm spots where hot water came up from deep in the planet. Others would sleep through the winter in caves. But the Kethhounds could not hide or sleep. They were too big and needed too much food. They would have to fight the cold and hunt for food even when it was deadly to go outside. Jake worried about them. He had seen how the cold could kill, and he knew many of the creatures would not survive. As Jake worked at his desk, he got a message on his computer. It was from Colonel Pete Hamilton, the man in charge of the outpost. The message said that all workers must stay inside during the winter season unless they had special permission. No one was allowed to go outside alone, and no one was allowed to help the native animals. The colonel said the animals were dangerous, and that helping. Them would waste resources. Jake frowned as he read the message. He understood the colonel's concerns, but he did not like the rule about not helping the animals. In Montana, his family had always helped injured wildlife. His father had taught him that all life was precious and that humans had a duty to protect creatures that could not protect themselves. Outside his window, Jake could see dark shapes moving in the snow. The Kethhounds were already coming closer to the human settlements, looking for warmth and food. They were desperate, and desperate animals did dangerous things. Jake could see a small pack moving near the outpost's fence. They were thin, and their fur was white with frost. The pack was led by a large female with silver-blue fur. She was bigger than the others and moved with confidence. Jake had seen her before during his observations. She was smart, maybe the smartest of all the Kethhounds. He had watched. He had started thinking of her as Luna, because she howled at the planet's 2 moons every night. Luna stopped near the fence and looked directly at Jake's window. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass. Jake felt a strange connection, like she was trying to tell him something. Then she turned and led her pack away into the swirling snow. Jake finished his coffee and went back to work. He had heating systems to check and repairs to plan. But he could not stop thinking about Luna and her pack. The winter was going to be terrible, and many creatures would die. He hoped Luna and her family would be strong enough to survive. As night fell over Kethera Prime, Jake listened to the wind and the distant howls of the Kethhounds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new dangers. But tonight, he would dream of silver-blue fur and golden eyes, and wonder what the intelligent creatures of this frozen world were thinking as they faced the deadly cold. 3 weeks into the harsh winter, Jake Morrison was doing his morning check of the heating systems around Outpost 7. The temperature had dropped to -115 degrees, and several heating units had stopped working during the night. Jake carried his tool bag and walked carefully on the icy paths between the buildings. The wind was so strong it could knock a person down. Jake had to hold on to the safety ropes that connected all the buildings. His special winter suit kept him alive, but he could still feel the cold trying to get through. His face mask was covered with ice from his breath, and he had to wipe it clean every few minutes to see. Jake was checking the main heating grid near the outpost entrance when he saw something that made him stop and stare. There was a large shape, moving slowly through the snow toward the outpost. At first, he thought it might be a piece of equipment blown by the wind, but then the shape moved in a way that was clearly alive. It was a Kethhound, and not just any Kethhound. It was Luna, the large female he had been watching for months. But something was very wrong. Luna was moving slowly and carefully, not with her usual confident walk. Her thick fur was white with ice, and Jake could see that she was shaking from the cold. What shocked Jake the most was that Luna was not acting like a wild animal. She was not prowling or hunting. She was walking straight toward the main entrance of the outpost, as if she knew exactly where she was going. As she got closer, Jake could see her golden eyes looking directly at him through his face mask. Then Jake saw something that made his heart skip a beat. Behind Luna, barely visible in the blowing snow, were 3 small shapes. They were her pups, and they were in terrible trouble. The little ones could barely move through the deep snow. They kept falling down and struggling to get back up. One of them was not moving at all. Luna reached the outpost entrance and did something Jake had never seen any wild animal do. She sat down in front of the big metal door and looked up at the security camera. Then she looked directly at Jake, who was standing about 50 feet away. Her golden eyes were filled with something Jake recognized. It was the same look he had seen in the eyes of human mothers when their children were in danger. It was desperation. Jake forgot about his work and walked closer to Luna. She did not run away or show her teeth. Instead, she made a soft whining sound, like a dog asking for help. Jake had never heard a Keth hound make that sound before. They usually howled or growled, but this was different. This was the sound of a mother begging for help. Jake looked at the 3 pups behind Luna. They were tiny, probably born just a few weeks ago. Their fur was not thick enough to protect them from the deadly cold. 2 of them were still moving, but very slowly. The 3rd one, the smallest, was lying still in the snow. Jake could see its tiny chest moving up and down, but barely. Luna stood up and walked to the smallest pup. She picked it up gently in her mouth and carried it to the outpost door. Then she put the pup down right in front of the entrance and backed away. She lay down in the snow and put her head on her paws, watching Jake with those golden eyes. Jake could not believe what he was seeing. Luna was giving her pup to the humans. She was trusting them to save her baby's life. But why? Keth hounds had never shown friendly behavior toward humans before. They usually stayed far away from human settlements. Jake's radio crackled with Amy Carter's voice. Amy was the xenobiologist who studied alien life forms. She had been watching the security cameras from inside the outpost. "Jake, get away from that creature right now," Amy said. Her voice was full of fear. Keth hounds are dangerous predators. It might be setting a trap for you. But Jake was not listening to Amy. He was watching Luna's behavior and thinking about what he was seeing. Luna was not acting like a predator. She was acting like a desperate mother who had run out of options. She had brought her dying pups to the only place on the planet where there was enough heat to save them. Jake realized something amazing. Luna had been watching him during all those months when he was observing the Keth hounds. She had learned that he was different from the other humans. While the other colonists ignored the creatures or saw them as threats, Jake had watched them with respect and interest. Luna had seen this difference, and now she was trusting him with the most precious things in her world. "Amy, I need you too. See this?" Jake said into his radio. "This is not normal animal behavior. Luna is asking for help." "Luna?" Amy's voice was confused. "Jake, you named that thing?" "She's not a thing," Jake said. "She's a mother trying to save her children." Jake looked at the 3 pups again. The 2 larger ones had crawled closer to their mother, but they were moving so slowly that Jake knew they would not survive much longer. The smallest one had not moved at all since Luna put it down. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He walked slowly toward Luna, keeping his hands visible so she could see he was not carrying any weapons. Luna watched him but did not move. When Jake got close to the smallest pup, Luna made a soft sound that seemed to say, "Please help." Jake knelt down next to the tiny creature. It was so small it could fit in his hands. Its fur was frozen solid, and its breathing was very weak. Jake could feel that the pup was dying from the cold. Without help, it would be dead within minutes. "Jake, don't touch that animal," Amy's voice came through the radio. "You don't know what diseases it might carry. And if you help it, the mother might attack you." But Luna was not acting threatening at all. She was watching Jake with hope in her golden eyes. She somehow understood that this human might be able to save her babies when she could not. Jake looked at Luna, then at the dying pup, then at the other 2 pups who were also in danger. He thought about Colonel Hamilton's rules about not helping native animals. He thought about the risk to his career and maybe his life. But he also thought about his father's words from long ago. Sometimes being human means doing what is right, not what is easy. "Amy," Jake said into his radio, "I need you to prepare the medical bay. We're going to have some very special patients." Jake's words over the radio caused immediate chaos inside Outpost 7. Amy Carter's voice came back sharp and worried. "Jake, you cannot bring those creatures inside. It's against all safety rules. Colonel Hamilton will never allow it." Jake knelt beside the smallest pup, watching its tiny chest barely moving up and down. The little creature was so cold that ice crystals had formed on its fur. Without help in the next few minutes, it would die. The other two pups were crawling closer to their mother, but they were also getting weaker. The medical bay is not set up for animals, Amy continued through the radio. We don't have the right equipment or medicine, and we don't know what diseases these creatures might carry. Jake looked at Luna, who was still lying in the snow watching him. Her golden eyes never left his face. She was waiting to see what he would do. Jake had never seen such trust from a wild animal before. It was like she knew he was her only hope. Amy, I need 10 minutes to think, Jake said. Keep watching the cameras and tell me if anyone else is coming. Jake stood up and looked around the outpost. The wind was getting stronger, and more snow was falling. The temperature was dropping even more. Soon it would be too cold for even the Kefhounds to survive outside. Before Jake could make any decision, his radio crackled again. This time it was Colonel Hamilton's voice, and he sounded angry. Morrison, what the hell are you doing out there? Carter says you're playing with wild animals. Jake's heart sank. The colonel was the one person who could stop him from helping the pups. Colonel Hamilton was a good leader, but he always followed the rules exactly. He never took risks that might put the outpost or its people in danger. Sir, there's a situation here, Jake said carefully. We have an injured animal that needs help. Negative. Morrison, you know the rules. No contact with native life forms. No wasting resources on animals. Get back inside immediately. Jake looked down at the tiny pup again. Its breathing was getting weaker. In his mind, he could hear his father's voice from years ago. His father had been a forest ranger in Montana, and he had taught Jake important lessons about life and duty. Son, his father had said, there will be times when you have to choose between following rules and following your heart. When that happens, remember that rules are made by people, but doing what's right comes from something deeper. Jake had been 12 years old when his father said those words. They had been rescuing an injured wolf that had been caught in a trap. Other people had said to let the wolf die, that it was just an animal and not worth the risk. But Jake's father had spent 3 hours freeing the wolf and treating its wounds. Sir, Jake said into the radio, I need to tell you something. This animal is not acting like a normal predator. It brought its babies to us for help. It's showing intelligence and trust that we've never seen before. I don't care if it's doing magic tricks, Morrison. Get back inside. That's an order. Jake looked at Luna again. She had not moved from her position. She was still watching him with those hopeful golden eyes. Jake realized that she was not just trusting him with her pups' lives. She was trusting him with something much bigger. She was trusting him to be the bridge between two different kinds of life. Amy's voice came through the radio again, but this time she sounded different. Less frightened and more curious. Jake, I've been watching the security cameras. The mother creature is not showing any signs of aggression. Her body language is completely submissive. And Jake, I've been studying the recordings of her behavior. She's not just randomly bringing her young here. She's been watching you specifically. Jake felt his heart beating faster. What do you mean? I mean, she's been observing you during your outside work for weeks. She's learned your schedule, your routes, even which window is your office. Jake, I think she chose you specifically to help her babies. Colonel Hamilton's voice cut through Amy's words. Carter, stop encouraging this nonsense. Morrison, you have 30 seconds to get back inside, or I'm sending security to drag you in. Jake closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. He opened his tool bag and pulled out a small emergency heating pad. It was designed to keep electronic equipment warm, but it might help the dying pup. Sir, I'm going to disobey. Your order, Jake said into the radio. I'm going to help these creatures, and I'm going to take full responsibility for what happens. The radio was quiet for a moment. Then Colonel Hamilton's voice came back, colder than the wind outside. Morrison, if you disobey my direct order, you'll be fired and sent back to Earth on the next transport. Your career will be over. Think about what you're throwing away. Jake thought about his career, his life's work, and everything he had built. On Kethra Prime, he thought about the important research he was doing and the lives he was saving with his heating systems. He thought about how much he loved his work and how hard it would be to start over. But then he looked at the 3 pups and their mother. The smallest pup had stopped moving completely. Its tiny body was giving up the fight against the deadly. Cold. Jake could not let it die when he had the power to save it. I understand, sir, Jake said. But I can't let them die when I can help them. Jake knelt down and carefully wrapped the smallest pup in the heating pad. The little creature was so cold it felt like ice, but Jake could still feel a faint heartbeat. He picked up the pup and held it close to his chest. Sharing his body heat. Luna made a soft sound that Jake had never heard before. It was not a howl or a growl. It was almost like a word, like she was saying thank you in her own language. Amy's voice came through the radio, and now she sounded excited instead of scared. Jake, I'm coming out to help you. I'm bringing the portable medical scanner and some supplies. Carter, you are not authorized to leave the outpost, Colonel Hamilton said. Sir, with respect, I think we're witnessing something that could change everything we know about these creatures. If Jake is right, this could be the first peaceful contact between humans and native life on Kethra Prime. Jake held the tiny pup close and felt its heartbeat getting a little stronger. The heating pad was working. But the other 2 pups also needed help, and Luna was still lying in the deadly cold. Amy, bring blankets and more heating pads. Jake sighed. And Amy, thank you for believing in me. As Jake waited for Amy, he looked at Luna and made her a promise. I'm going to save your babies, all of them. I don't care what it costs me. Luna seemed to understand. She closed her golden eyes and rested her head on her paws, finally allowing herself to hope that her children might live. Amy Carter rushed through the airlock doors of Outpost 7, carrying a bag full of medical supplies and heating equipment. The wind outside was so strong, it almost knocked her down, but she fought her way to where Jake was kneeling in the snow. With Luna and her pups. How are they doing? Amy asked, breathing hard from the cold, and the struggle against the wind. Jake looked up at her with relief. The smallest pup was still wrapped against his chest, and he could feel its heartbeat getting stronger. But the other 2 pups were getting weaker, and Luna herself was starting to shiver badly. The little one is responding to the heat, Jake said, but we need to get all of them inside soon, or we're going to lose them. Amy knelt down next to the 2 larger pups. They were both males, bigger than their sister, but still very young. Their eyes were not even open yet. Amy pulled out a medical scanner and ran it over the first pup. Their body temperature is dangerously low, she said. Jake, these creatures are dying from hypothermia. Even if we warm them up, there might be permanent damage to their organs. Jake felt his heart sink. He had risked everything to help these pups, and now Amy was telling him they might die anyway. But he was not going to give up. He had made a promise to Luna, and he was going to keep it. What do we need to do? Jake asked. Amy looked at her scanner readings, and then at the pups. Her scientific mind was working fast, thinking about how to save lives that no human had ever tried to save before. We need to warm them up slowly and carefully, she said. Too fast, and we could shock their systems. Too slow, and they'll die from the cold. We need to control their temperature exactly. Jake smiled for the first time since this whole situation started. Temperature control is what I do best. Jake and Amy worked together to wrap the two larger pups in heating blankets. Jake had designed these blankets for human use, but he quickly adjusted the temperature settings to work for smaller bodies. Amy monitored their vital signs, while Jake controlled the heat. Luna watched everything they did. She had moved closer to her pups, and Jake could see that she was trying to understand what the humans were doing. When Amy put a small breathing mask over one pup's nose, Luna made a worried sound. "It's okay, girl," Jake said softly to Luna. "We're helping them breathe. The mask gives them warm air." Luna seemed to understand that Jake was explaining things to her. She stopped making worried sounds and continued to watch quietly. Jake was amazed by how calm she stayed. Any other wild animal would have been panicking or trying to attack the humans touching their babies. The storm outside was getting worse. The wind was howling louder, and the snow was falling so hard that Jake could barely see 10 feet in any direction. But Jake and Amy kept working in the snow, using their own body heat and the heating equipment to keep the pups alive. After 30 minutes, something wonderful happened. The smallest pup, the female that Jake had been holding against his chest, opened her eyes for the first time. They were bright gold, just like her mother's. She looked up at Jake and made a tiny sound, like a baby bird asking for food. "She's awake," Jake said with excitement. "Amy, look at this." Amy looked at the tiny pup and smiled. "Her vital signs are getting stronger. Jake, I think she's going to make it." Luna heard the excitement in their voices and crawled closer. "When?" She saw her daughter's open eyes. She made a sound of pure joy. It was a soft howl that somehow sounded like singing. The two male pups were also getting better. Their breathing was stronger, and they were starting to move their legs. One of them even tried to crawl toward his mother, but Jake knew they were not safe yet. The storm was getting worse, and the temperature was still dropping. Even with the heating equipment, it was too cold to keep the pups alive outside much longer. "We need to get them inside," Jake said. "All of them, including Luna." Amy looked worried. "Jake, Luna is huge. She weighs probably 200 pounds. And we still don't know if she'll be aggressive once she's inside the outpost." Jake looked at Luna, who was still lying calmly in the snow, watching her pups get better. "She's not going to hurt us, Amy. Look at her behavior. She's been trusting us with the most important things in her world." Amy thought about it for a moment. "Okay, but we can't take them through the main entrance. Colonel Hamilton would stop us for sure. Is there another way?" Jake's engineer mind started working. The storage bay on the east side has its own entrance. It's not being used right now, and it has its own heating system. I could set up a temporary shelter there. Won't someone notice if we're using extra power for heating? Jake grinned. "Not if I reroute some power from the main grid. I've been working on efficiency improvements anyway. I can make it look like a normal system test." Amy laughed despite the serious situation. "You're going to lie to Colonel Hamilton about power usage?" "I'm going to creatively manage our energy resources," Jake said. "There's a difference." Working together, Jake and Amy carefully moved the 3 pups toward the storage bay entrance. Luna followed them, staying close but not interfering. Jake was amazed by how she seemed to trust them completely. The storage bay was cold and dark, but it was warmer than outside. Jake quickly set up heating lamps and created a warm area with blankets and soft materials. Amy arranged the medical equipment so she could monitor the pup's health. Luna explored the space carefully, sniffing everything and making sure it was safe for her babies. When she was satisfied, she lay down in the corner where she could watch. Both her pups and the entrance. Jake set up his laptop computer and began monitoring the heating system. He adjusted the temperature carefully, making sure it was warm enough to keep the pups healthy but not so warm that it would hurt them. Amy was running tests on blood samples she had taken from the pups. Jake, these creatures are remarkable. Their biology is similar to Earth wolves, but they have adaptations for extreme cold that we've never seen before. The female pup, who was the strongest of the three, crawled over to Jake and touched his hand with her tiny paw. Jake felt something amazing happen. It was like the pup was saying hello, recognizing him as the person who had saved her life. "I think she likes you," Amy said with a smile. Jake gently petted the tiny creature. Her fur was soft and warm now, no longer frozen with ice. She made a happy sound and snuggled against his hand. Luna watched this interaction between her daughter and the human who had saved her. She made a soft sound that Jake had never heard before. It sounded almost like she was saying thank you in her own language. For the first time since this whole adventure started, Jake felt like they might actually succeed. The pups were alive, Luna was safe, and they were all warm and protected from the deadly storm outside. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. Colonel Hamilton would eventually find out what they had done, and there would be consequences. But as he watched the tiny female pup playing with his fingers, Jake knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than following the rules. For 3 days, Jake and Amy took turns caring for Luna and her pups in the secret storage bay. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside their makeshift shelter, the little family was warm and safe. Jake had created the perfect environment, with heating lamps that kept the temperature just right and soft bedding made from unused supply blankets. The pups were growing stronger every hour. The 2 males, who Jake had started calling Storm and Ice, were now crawling around and playing with each other. But it was the smallest pup, the female, who amazed Jake the most. She had recovered faster than her brothers and seemed to have a special connection with Jake. The little female pup followed Jake everywhere he went in the storage bay. When he sat down to check his heating equipment, she would curl up next to his leg. When he stood up to adjust the temperature controls, she would try to follow him on her tiny, unsteady legs. Jake had started calling her Star because her golden eyes sparkled like stars in the night sky. Amy was fascinated by what she was seeing. "Jake, this is incredible. Star is imprinting on you like you're her father, but she still recognizes Luna as her mother. I've never seen anything like this in any animal species." Luna seemed happy about the bond between Jake and her daughter. Sometimes Jake would catch Luna watching them play together, and he could swear she was smiling. Luna had also started bringing gifts to Jake every day. First, she had brought small ice crystals that she found near the heating vents. Then she brought interesting rocks and pieces of metal. On the 3rd day, Luna brought something that made Amy very excited. It was a chunk of blue-green metal that glowed with a soft light. Amy scanned it with her equipment and could hardly believe the readings. "Jake, this metal is incredible," Amy said. "It's some kind of refined crystal, but it's been processed in a way our technology can't duplicate. This small piece contains enough energy to power the entire outpost for a week." Jake looked at the glowing metal, then at Luna, who was watching him with her intelligent golden eyes. "She's trying to pay us back," he said. "She knows we helped her babies, and she wants to give us something valuable in return." Amy ran more tests on the metal. "Jake, this isn't just valuable. This is revolutionary. If we could learn how to make this, it would change everything about space travel and energy production." While Amy worked on her tests, Jake played with the 3 pups. They were growing so fast that he could see changes every day. Storm was the biggest and strongest, always trying to explore new parts of the storage bay. Ice was quieter and more careful, often staying close to his mother. But Star was the most curious and intelligent of the 3. Star had learned to respond to Jake's voice. When he called her name, she would come running on her little legs. She had also learned some simple commands. If Jake pointed at something, Star would go look at it. If Jake sat down and patted his leg, Star would come and sit next to him. Luna watched all of this with great interest. Sometimes she would make soft sounds to her pups, and Jake began to realize she was teaching them about humans. She was telling them that Jake and Amy were safe, that they were friends who had helped the family. On the fourth day, disaster almost struck. Jake was in the storage bay playing with the pups when his radio crackled with Colonel Hamilton's angry voice. "Morrison, I know you're hiding something. Security cameras show unusual power usage in Storage Bay 7. I'm coming to investigate." Jake's heart started beating fast. If Colonel Hamilton found Luna and the pups, it would be the end of everything. The colonel would probably have the animals removed from the outpost, and they might not survive being moved back into the cold. "Amy, we have a problem," Jake said into his radio. "The colonel is coming." Amy was in her lab analyzing Luna's gift when she got Jake's message. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 5 minutes." Jake looked at Luna and her pups. They were all healthy now, strong enough to survive outside for short periods. But if they were discovered, Colonel Hamilton might do something that would separate the family forever. Then, Star did something that amazed Jake. The little pup seemed to sense that something was wrong. She went to her mother and made urgent sounds, like she was trying to warn Luna about danger. Luna immediately understood. She stood up and began gathering her pups. "It's like they know we're in trouble," Jake said in wonder. Luna looked at Jake and made a soft sound. Then she did something incredible. She walked over to Jake and gently touched his hand with her nose. It was her way of saying goodbye and thank you. Jake felt tears in his eyes. "You don't have to go," he whispered. "I'll find a way to protect you." But Luna was already moving toward the exit. She knew that staying would cause problems for the humans who had saved her babies. She picked up ice in her mouth and looked at Storm, who followed her toward the door. Star, however, did not want to leave Jake. The little pup sat down next to Jake's feet and refused to move when her mother called to her. She looked up at Jake with her golden eyes, and Jake could see that she was torn between her mother and the human who had become like a second father to her. Luna made patient sounds to Star, trying to convince her daughter to come. But Star just moved closer to Jake, as if asking him to come with them. Jake heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Colonel Hamilton was getting closer. Jake knew he had to make a quick decision. He could hide the pups and hope the colonel did not search carefully. Or he could let Luna take her family and hope they would be safe in the wild. But then Colonel Hamilton's voice came through the storage bay door. "Morrison, I know you're in there. Open this door immediately." Jake looked at Luna and her pups one last time. "I won't let him hurt you," he promised. Jake walked to the door and opened it. Colonel Hamilton stood there with 2 security guards, looking very angry. He pushed past Jake and entered the storage bay. Colonel Hamilton stopped when he saw Luna and her 3 pups. His mouth fell open in surprise. Luna stood protectively in front of her babies, but she did not show aggression. She just watched the colonel calmly. "Morrison, what the hell is this?" Colonel Hamilton demanded. Before Jake could answer, something wonderful happened. Star walked over to Colonel Hamilton and sat down in front of him. She looked up at the angry man with her bright golden eyes and made a tiny sound, like she was saying hello. Colonel Hamilton stared at the little pup. Slowly, his angry expression began to change. Star was so small and cute that even the strict colonel could not help but be affected by her charm. "Sir," Jake said carefully, "I'd like you to meet Luna and her family. They're the reason I've been breaking regulations." Colonel Hamilton looked at Luna, then at the pups, then at the sophisticated heating system Jake had built. "Morrison, You've been running an unauthorized animal hospital in my storage bay." "Yes, sir." Colonel Hamilton was quiet for a long moment. Then Star did something that changed everything. She walked over to the colonel's boot and gently touched it with her paw, like she was shaking hands. "Well," Colonel Hamilton said slowly, "I'll be damned." Colonel Hamilton knelt down and carefully touched Star's tiny paw with his finger. The little pup made a happy sound and tried to climb onto his boot. For the first time since Jake had known him, the colonel smiled. "She's remarkable, Colonel," Hamilton said quietly. "I've never seen any wild animal act like this." Jake felt relief wash over him. "Sir, Luna and her family are not ordinary animals. They're intelligent, maybe as smart as dolphins or whales on Earth." Amy arrived at the storage bay, carrying her test results about Luna's gift. When she saw Colonel Hamilton with Star, she stopped in surprise. "Colonel, I have something you need to see," Amy said. She held up the glowing blue-green metal that Luna had brought. "This material is beyond our current technology. It's been refined and processed using methods we don't understand." Colonel Hamilton stood up and examined the metal. "Where did this come from?" "Luna brought it to us," Jake explained. "She's been bringing gifts every day since we helped her pups. First ice crystals, then rocks, and now this." The colonel looked at Luna with new respect. "You mean she's been trading with you?" Amy nodded excitedly. "Sir, this changes everything we thought we knew about these creatures. They're not just intelligent animals. They have technology." Over the next hour, Jake and Amy explained everything to Colonel Hamilton. They told him about Luna's unusual behavior, the way she had specifically chosen Jake for help, and how the pups had formed bonds with humans while staying connected to their mother. Colonel Hamilton listened carefully, asking questions and watching Luna and her family. The more he learned, the more amazed he became. "Morrison," the colonel said finally, "I came here to arrest you for disobeying orders. But now, I think you might have made the most important discovery in human history." 3 days later, something incredible happened. Luna began leading Jake and Amy away from the outpost, deeper into the ice caves than any human had ever gone. She carried Star in her mouth, while Storm and Ice followed behind. The little family was showing the humans something special. Jake and Amy followed Luna through tunnels of ice that sparkled like jewels. The caves were warmer than the surface, heated by underground hot springs. As they went deeper, Jake began to see something that made his heart race with excitement. There were carvings in the ice walls, beautiful, complex patterns that could only have been made by intelligent beings. The carvings told stories of Kethhound families and their lives on the frozen planet. "Amy, look at this," Jake whispered. "These aren't just random scratches. These are art." Amy was scanning the walls with her equipment. "Jake, these carvings are thousands of years old. The Kethhounds have been creating art and recording history longer than humans have existed on this planet." Luna led them deeper into the cave system. Soon they came to a huge chamber that took Jake's breath away. The chamber was filled with structures made of ice and stone, carved and shaped into beautiful buildings. It was a city, hidden deep under the frozen surface of Kethera Prime. But the most amazing thing was not the buildings. It was what the Kethhounds were doing inside them. Jake could see dozens of the creatures working together, using tools to shape ice and stone. They were mining the same crystals that humans wanted, but they were doing it in a completely different way. "They're not just taking the crystals," Amy said in wonder. "They're cultivating them, growing them like farmers grow crops." Jake watched the Kethhounds work. They used the heat from underground springs to carefully control how the crystals formed. They shaped the crystals as they grew, creating the refined metal that Luna had given to Jake. It was technology that humans had never Imagine. Luna set Star down and made a long, complex sound to the other Keth-hounds. Jake could not understand the words, but he could tell she was explaining about the humans and what had happened to her pups. An old Keth-hound with silver fur and wise golden eyes approached Jake and Amy. This was clearly a leader, someone important in their society. The old creature looked at Jake for a long moment, then made a sound that seemed like a greeting. Star ran to Jake and touched his hand with her paw. Then she ran to the old Keth-hound and made excited sounds. Jake realized that Star was telling her grandfather or elder about the human who had saved her life. The old Keth-hound nodded and walked to a wall covered in crystal formations. He touched one of the crystals, and it began to glow with warm light. The crystal was carved with symbols that Jake had never seen before, but somehow he understood their meaning. They meant friend and family and welcome. Amy was recording everything with her camera. Jake, this is an entire civilization. They have language, art, technology, and social structures. They're not just intelligent animals, they're people. Over the following weeks, Jake became the first human ambassador to the Keth-hound civilization. Luna served as his translator and guide, while Star became his constant companion. The little pup grew quickly, but she never lost her special bond with Jake. The Keth-hounds taught Jake and Amy their crystal growing techniques. In return, Jake shared human heating technology that helped the Keth-hounds survive the harsh winters more easily. Amy learned their language and began recording their history and culture. Colonel Hamilton reported the discovery to Earth, and soon Kethra Prime became the center of the most important scientific research in human history. The mining operation was transformed into a cooperation project where humans and Keth-hounds worked together to harvest crystals in sustainable ways. Jake built the first interspecies research station where humans and Keth-hounds could work side by side. The heating systems he designed kept both species comfortable, and the crystal technology they developed together was far better than anything either species could create alone. Star grew into a beautiful adult Keth-hound, but she remained Jake's partner and friend. She learned to understand human speech and became the primary translator between the two species. Other young Keth-hounds followed her example, learning from both their parents and their human friends. Luna became the leader of the Keth-hounds who worked with humans. Her decision to trust Jake with her pups had changed the course of history for both species. She was honored by both humans and Keth-hounds as the mother of interspecies cooperation. Years later, when Jake was old and gray, he would sit by the warm fires of the research station and watch human children playing with young Keth-hounds. Star, now a mother herself, would bring her own pups to meet Jake, continuing the friendship that had started with a desperate mother and 3 frozen babies. The story of Luna and her pups became legend among both species. It was the story of how trust and compassion could bridge any gap, how kindness to the smallest creatures could change entire worlds, and how sometimes the most important discoveries came not from conquering, but from caring. Jake's choice to help 3 dying pups had led to humanity's first true alien alliance. It proved that in a universe full of wonders, the greatest wonder of all was the power of different beings to care for each other across the vast distances that separated their worlds and their ways of life.